Welcome to the Grassman Chronicles Halloween episode. We are your hosts, Trees from LookAtTheTrees. I'm
How's it
Dave
going,
from the
everybody?
Captive Desk, and our guest host joining us for this episode is Slew Suffer Almighty from the Skeptical Satanist. Hello, Trees. Hello, Slew.
Hey
How's it
Dave,
going?
how's it going?
In this Halloween episode, we are taking a look at some classic Halloween monsters: vampires, werewolves, and mummies. We hope everyone is having a spooky and fun Halloween season and a happy Halloween to all. And a reminder to subscribe to the Grassman Chronicles channel if you aren't already, so we can shift the show over there. We need to get that up around 100 subs over there, and then we'll shift everything over there. All right. So everybody subscribe over there on the Grassman Chronicles. The link is below. And while you're looking below at the links, you can also see Trees. If you look at the Trees and Slew's channel, Skeptical Satanist, their links are in the description as well. And welcome everybody that's joining us. And let's get things started with our first story on vampires. Many of the images depicted today of vampires stem from Bram Stoker's 1897 horror novel titled Dracula. But Stoker got his ideas from many sources and many mythologies about vampires, and most likely only a sampling of them, as there are vampire-like mythologies in cultures from all over the globe, and going back to ancient times, thousands of years ago. Stoker's Dracula introduced many of the familiar vampire traits, such as aversion to sunlight, immortality, and the need to drink blood. Dracula is a classic Gothic horror novel and has become one of the most famous and enduring works of vampire fiction. The novel tells the story of Count Dracula, a vampire from Transylvania, and his attempt to move to England in order to spread the undead curse and find new blood to sustain himself. Dracula is known for popularizing many vampire conventions that persist in modern vampire lore, including the idea of vampires being repelled by crosses and garlic, the ability to transform into bats or wolves, and the need to drink human blood to survive. The novel explores themes of sexuality, fear of the unknown, and the conflict between good and evil. It has inspired numerous adaptations, both in literature and in various forms of media, making Count Dracula one of the most iconic vampires and enduring figures in the horror genre. Beings that drink blood and eat the flesh and steal souls or life forces for their own uses or to damn the victims come in all shapes, sizes, and forms, depending on the cultures and beliefs of the people groups. The name Dracula comes from Vlad III's moniker Dracula, derived from his father's name, Dracul. Dracul is derived from the old Slavic word drak, meaning dragon or devil. Thus, Vlad III was called Son of the Dragon or Son of the Devil. Stoker was inspired by this historical name when creating his vampire character, Count Dracula. Vlad the Impaler was notorious for his extreme cruelty and brutal methods of ruling. He earned his nickname due to his preferred method of execution, which involved impaling his enemies on large spikes. Vlad the Impaler ruled a region which is now part of modern-day Romania. The setting for much of Stoker's novel is Transylvania, which is in the same general area. The concept of vampires has a rich and diverse history, with origins in ancient mythology and a significant impact on literature and popular culture. Vampires have evolved and adapted to suit the storytelling needs of different times and cultures. The vampires we commonly think of today have their origins in regions like Romania and Serbia. They had beliefs in undead creatures that returned to life to drink the blood of the living. The term vampire is believed to have originated from the Serbian word vampir, or the Bulgarian word that is similar. In the 17th and 18th centuries, parts of Europe experienced a vampire hysteria, marked by vampire hunts, exhumations of suspected vampires, and the staking of corpses. Several books like The Vampire of Kring and an account of the sufferings of George Lutyens contributed to the vampire craze during this time. Vampires or vampire-like creatures also appear in the folklore of other cultures. For example, the Jiangshi in Chinese mythology and the Nosferatu in Slavic mythology. These creatures often had different characteristics and different weaknesses compared to the Western vampire versions. One of the most well-known vampire characteristics is the ability to shapeshift into a bat. In many vampire stories, vampires can transform into a bat or a swarm of bats. In some vampire lore, bats are considered the familiars, or animal companions of vampires. Bats are often associated with darkness and the night, making them fitting companions for creatures of the night like vampires. Bats have been used as symbols of death and the afterlife in various cultures. In vampire lore, they are sometimes seen as symbolic of the undead because they are creatures of the night and are often associated with cemeteries. There are species of vampire bats that feed on the blood of other animals. These bats are found in parts of Central and South America. While they are not the inspiration for the vampire myth, their existence may have contributed to the association between vampires and bats. In Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, the title character is described as having the ability to transform into a bat. He uses this ability to move stealthily and escape danger. Vampire stories and folklore can also be found in cultures around the world, each with their own versions about these bloodthirsty creatures. Ancient civilizations such as the Sumerians and Egyptians had myths and stories about blood-drinking entities or demons. In ancient Greek and Roman mythology, there were tales of creatures like the Lamia and the Styges, which were associated with drinking blood or preying on the living. The vampire, as we commonly think of it today, has its origins in Eastern European folklore. In regions like Romania and Serbia, there were beliefs in undead creatures that return to life to drink the blood of the living. In Greek folklore, the Vrykolikas is a type of vampire or undead creature. It is believed that those who were excommunicated by the church, committed suicide, or were considered sinners in life may return as Phrycolicus after death. In Slavic folklore, there are creatures known as upirs, which are similar to vampires. The word Nosferatu has also been associated with vampire-like beings in Slavic mythology. The famous vampire film, Nosferatu, is based on these legends. In China, they have hopping vampires. Ji-un-shi are reanimated corpses. They move by hopping and are known for draining the life force of the living. They are typically reanimated by a Taoist priest's mistake during a ritual. In Indian folklore, the Shurul is a female ghost or vampire-like creature. She is often depicted as seductive, malevolent spirit who preys on men and drains their life force. While not a traditional vampire, El Chupacabra is a creature from Latin American folklore known for attacking and drinking the blood of livestock, particularly goats. It has vampiric qualities and is often depicted as a blood-sucking monster. The Philippines has a rich tradition of vampire folklore. The Manananggal, that's like saying it really fast is hard, is a vampire who separates its upper torso from its lower body to fly at night and prey on victims. The Aswang is another type of vampire-like creature that can take on various forms and consume flesh, blood, and organs. In Malaysian folklore, the Panangalan is a vampire-like creature. It is typically a woman who detaches her head from her body at night to seek out blood. She is known for her long, trailing entrails. In Poland, the Straziga is a vampire-like creature often depicted as a female vampire that can transform into an owl or other animals to prey on the living. In Madagascar, the Remanga is a type of vampire that feeds on the blood of nobles and young children. It is believed to have the ability to shapeshift into different animals. Now, these are just a few examples of vampire stories from around the world. And there are many more variations and interpretations of vampire-like creatures in different cultures. Vampire folklore continues to evolve and adapt to the changing cultural and literary landscapes. In folklore, in folklore, mythology, and various cultural traditions, vampires, witches, demons, and shapeshifters are distinct and separate entities or concepts. However, in certain works of fiction and modern popular culture, these supernatural beings can sometimes be combined or portrayed as having overlapping traits. Vampires are undead creatures that feed on the blood of the living to sustain themselves. They are often associated with immortality, nocturnal activity, and a range of supernatural abilities, such as shape-shifting, mind control, and enhanced strength. While vampires are distinct beings, they can also be portrayed with diverse traits and abilities in various fictional interpretations. Now, if you're worried about a vampire, there are ways to take care of them. The methods and means to kill a vampire vary across different cultures and their respective vampire folklore. Here's a few examples of how vampires can be killed or repelled from various cultural traditions. A wooden stake, one of the most common methods, is driven through the vampire's heart to kill it. In some traditions, a stake made of iron or silver is used. Severing the vampire's head from its body is another way to kill it. That seemed to would do it, but it works for vampires too. So the method is prevalent in various vampire myths, including the European vampire lore. Many vampire myths state that vampires are vulnerable to sunlight. Exposure to sunlight can cause them to disintegrate or burst into flames, ultimately leading to their destruction. Fire is often considered a powerful weapon against vampires. Setting a vampire on fire or trapping them in a burning building can lead to their demise. In many cultures, religious symbols and items like crosses, holy water, and consecrated objects are used to repel or destroy vampires. Placing these items near a vampire can weaken it or kill it. In some cultures, decapitating the vampire and placing garlic in the mouth are used as methods to prevent a vampire from rising again. In some vampire legends, exorcism is used to remove the evil spirit from the possessed body, effectively killing the vampire. In some vampire traditions, vampires cannot cross running water, such as a river or stream. This can be used to trap or repel them. Ensuring that a vampire is buried properly, according to the customs of the culture, can prevent it from returning as a vampire. This includes placing a brick or stone in the mouth or driving a stake into the body. Silver is considered a potent weapon against vampires. Silver bullets or silver weapons can be used to kill them. Some vampire lore suggests that vampires cast no reflection in mirrors. The sight of their reflection in a mirror can supposedly drive them away or cause them harm. Running water, such as rivers or streams, is believed to be a barrier that vampires cannot cross. So keep the garlic, the crucifix, the silver, and maybe a moat handy, and you should be safe from vampires. So what do you think? Vampires, lots of similar stories all around the world, and they all seem to stem from drinking blood or somehow deriving the life force from the living. Is that generally what it seems to be?
That seems to be the lore.
There's a big fascination with a life force in the blood, I think.
Right. And I mean it feeds into like the blood magic of other different things like religions and stuff like that.
And of course there's the demonic, like you say, with the religion, there's the demonic aspect, there's the possessed aspect, and sometimes the only cure is getting a exorcism. So there's a big religious aspect, especially in the European areas.
Right.
So what do you think?
I didn't realize that it had like that story or variations of that story were so like I didn't realize it was worldwide. Like there was so many different countries that had that type of myth or legend in their culture. That's really interesting.
That's the first thing I told Trees when we were talking about it. I said, wow, I said, we might have to revisit vampire stories because there are so many of them. And
Yeah.
everywhere. They're just everywhere. So it's very popular. They do vary a lot, but one thing that seems to be in common is undead drinking blood and maybe passing it along by like with Dracula, he bites his victims and then they're vampires too. And maybe, you know, to expand the group or not be so lonely, because one thing I've noticed with immortality stories, and Dracula included, is you kind of feel sorry for them because they're lonely. You know, the whole, you know, you could marry somebody, but then they're going to grow old and pass away. And then how many times can you do that to yourself, you know, before you just can't do it anymore and you just decide to be lonely? And you kind of feel a little bit sorry for them that, you know, immortal. The Highlander too was the same story, where yeah, basically he said he stopped trying to fall in love because he knew what was going to happen, you know. So be careful what you wish for. Maybe it comes into play here a little bit. So any other thoughts on vampires? I see Tobin in the chat. Hello, Tobin.
I don't know, like, what was your guys' favorite vampire movie that you ever saw?
I like the Stoker's version. My wife has a copy, and we've watched it many times. And
I liked that 30 Days of Night. Did you ever see that?
I don't know that one.
I've seen that one. It was pretty good. I don't know. I'd have to say maybe like, do lichens count as vampires? I don't know what the
Underworld.
Yeah,
movies.
I was gonna say probably one of the Underworlds would be one that I'd
werewolf.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, wrong ones. Yeah. What did they call the vampires in that movie?
I don't remember.
Do they identify as
Maybe I
vampires?
was mixing it up. I'm not.
I have to think about it.
Not sure.
I'm gonna have to pull the movie out later and check. My wife isn't here, or I would ask her. That's a good trivia. If they actually identified, they are all undead, and they all trace themselves back to a original clan and everything. But yeah.
And sometimes I mix that up with Blade. Like I'll mix the Underworld stuff up with like scenes in Blade, and I get them two movies mixed up in my brain.
Blade.
That was the other one I was thinking of too. Was Blade. I was going to say that. That's a
pretty
close
good
second for me, probably.
30 Days of Night, man. Like if you get a chance, watch it. It's gory as can be, and like the vampires are like from some Slavic country, and they speak this dead language, and they're fast, and it's insane. And they go to Alaska because they can get away with 30 days of night. You know what I mean? Like the sun don't rise for 30 days in Alaska, so they go up there and feast.
Yeah. And let's not forget the comic versions. You've got George Hamilton, you've got Leslie Nielsen, you've got Eddie Murphy. They've all done spoofs on the Dracula. So yeah, if you want to, what would you call it? More family friendly, maybe. Those, yeah, you can always check out those movies. They're always good ones. And then you've got the Munsters, because Grandpa and Morticia are not Morticia. Lily are vampires.
Yeah. And the little one, the young one's a werewolf, right?
Eddie's a werewolf. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, Grandpa, a lot of times he's hanging upside down taking a nap.
Wasn't there one with like uh was it Dan Aykroyd or something? I can't
I know
remember.
there's other ones I'm not remembering off the top of my head. I didn't make a note on them, but like say some of my favorites are when George Hamilton starts out his and he's playing the organ music, you know, the classic thing in the castle, and the wolves are all howling outside, and he's playing along, and he goes, "Children of the night, shut up." And it just sets the whole movie right there.
Yeah.
And then Leslie Nielsen's shadow is falls down the stairs, I think, at the beginning. Comes because it's got that big, you know, robe and all that stuff, and it comes down the big staircase, and then the shadow trips and falls down. So it's a good setup for the movie. You know what's coming. And of course, vampires shapeshift, and that's a popular myth. Anything that's scary or something seems to be a shapeshifter myth around it too. So bats that come out at night, it's kind of spooky. They're kind of spooky. They make, you know, little squeaky things, and they fly around at night. And a lot of people, they, you know, kind of spook them still today. So yeah, I can see all the association, you know, with mixing it all together as the myths grew and combined and everything. So speaking of shape shifting, since vampires can be shapeshifters and appear as wolves, trees, why don't you share with us our next story about werewolves?
All right, Dave. I decided to kind of go with how they formed through history more than the whole superhuman strength and kill them with a silver bullet and all that. You know, I figure everybody kind of knows that already. So I figured I would kind of venture off into the weeds a little bit with my stuff. So with that said, the werewolf, lycanthrope, dogman, uh, shape-shifting were creatures transcend many cultures and geographic locations. Indigenous Americans with skinwalkers and dogmen, and there are multiple jungle cultures that have were-jaguar creatures. So it kind of seems like whatever animals are nearby, they'll maybe have a were creature of that sort. But we will be focusing on the werewolf to bring in the Halloween season. The Greek words lycos and anthropos are combined to make the word lycanthrope, meaning wolfman. Wolves and humans have some similar behaviors. They live in family units, they hunt and fight in strategic tactical packs, and humans and wolves often hunt the same prey animals to survive. Folklore seems to have absorbed our competition and various interactions with wolves, creating legends of wolfmen or werewolves. In 1400s Europe, farming was changing to mostly sheep as the primary livestock animal. Not only did humans like sheep, so did wolves. Suddenly, wolves were perceived as more of a threat to the livelihood of humans by preying on the humans' costly sheep. Because of existing symbolism in Christianity of the congregation being a flock of sheep for the shepherd to tend to, that made the symbolism of the wolf evil, and that eventually spiraled into the devil slash Satan changing men into wolfmen hybrids. Christians kept absorbing the werewolf uh, lore instead of refuting it. They believed some witches could turn into wolves. but they said it wasn't a true transformation. It was an illusion created by the devil, or glamours, a type of magic that that make things appear different than their form. Medieval Christian demonologists also believed Satan would take the form of a wolf. Catholic clergyman and deranged misogynist Heinrich Kramer and Inquisitor Johann Springer co-authored the Malleus Maleficarum, which is translated to the Hammer of the Witches or the Hammer of Evil. And it was a legal text for hunting, identifying, torturing, and punishing witches. The Malleus Maleficarum gives detailed instructions of torture procedures to attract confessions. Once you get a confession, you have to get a witness to verify, and now you can begin punishment, such as burning at the stake. The werewolf trials took place in the 1500s alongside and combined with witch trials. The persecution of werewolves and the associated folklore is an integral part of the witch hunt phenomenon, albeit a marginal one. Accusations of lycanthropy involved only a small fraction of the witchcraft trials. These types of werewolf/witch trials are documented in France, England, Livonia, the Netherlands, the Spanish Netherlands, among others. During the early period, accusations of lycanthropy were mixed with accusations of wolf riding or wolf charming. Some known cases of men being executed include Jan Leloup, 5 November 1607, Johann Prikelke, 1606 in Masick, and Mathis Stoop, and they tortured Stoop until he told them that the wolf skin he wore was given to him by the devil, and then Stoop was burned at the stake in Asperzigham, and some of them were also executed for witchcraft simultaneously with werewolfism. And finally, we have a link to the factual. Murderers and cannibals existed and operated in these medieval societies and communities. There weren't terms such as serial killer back then. It seems as they struggled to understand how a person could commit such atrocious acts on their fellow humans, and to take it a step further, to prey on the most vulnerable, the innocent. It must be a monster. The folklore would insist that it must be monsters. The folklore, however, was just a tragic way of exploring and attempting to understand men doing monstrous acts by transforming them into actual monsters of lore and legend. The earliest account I could find was of, I don't know how you say this, but I think it's Giles Garnier. He was a French serial killer and cannibal convicted of being a werewolf and burnt alive as a result of it on the 18th of January, 1574. He was reclusive and began hunting children as food to provide for his wife and children, which is wild in its own right. And then on October 1572, he claimed his first victim, a 10-year-old girl in a vineyard. He appears to have had 4 victims, 2 boys and 2 girls. 78 girls and women were attributed to Mikhail the Werewolf Popkov between 1992 and 2010 in Russia. In 1994 to 1995, Jack Owen Spillman of Spokane, Washington, was known as the Werewolf Butcher. There's too many werewolf killers to do a comprehensive list, so I will finish up with Albert Fish, the Werewolf of Wisteria. Born on May 19th, 1870. Early in life, Albert was abused in an orphanage and found out he enjoyed receiving pain and inflicting it on others. In adulthood, Fish believed he was receiving messages from the Apostle John. His son observed Fish standing on a hill with his arms outstretched, screaming, "I am Christ." He became convinced he was being instructed by God to castrate little boys. Psychiatrists diagnosed Fish with religious mania. In 1919, he began luring children to their demise. The Werewolf of Wisteria was executed by electric chair at Sing Sing Prison, January 16th, 1936, for killing and eating a young child named Grace Budd. Fish's crimes are so hideous, I won't go into detail on this stream due to the graphic nature. So, that is my winding tale of the origins and folklore behind the werewolf. As with most spooky and scary and evil things and tales, we humans are the true monsters and the true scary things. And that's my piece on werewolves. Do you guys have anything to say or add or anything?
Slew, go ahead.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That was I didn't realize. Well, that makes sense with the lichens now, with all of that being werewolves. But
Well, I think that's one of the main points that you made, was that people trying to explain these horrific crimes, and how could a human being do that? It is hard to fathom how somebody can do some of these horrific crimes.
I didn't realize that was his nickname either. That's Albert Fish, right? Is that
Yes.
what you said? Yeah.
That was one of his nicknames. He was also the Vampire of Brooklyn, Dave.
Oh.
And I was going to
he was
say,
a New York. He's a New York killer.
Is there a story or a movie based on the fellow that was feeding his family, his neighbors?
I'm not sure if there's a movie based on it. It seemed like he was just a very reclusive person, and he must have not been so much that he couldn't get a wife, because he had a wife and I believe children, that like he just began seeing other people as food, I guess. And I don't know, because I mean it's from like the 1500s, so like I don't even know the details of if his family knew that they were eating other people, or was he just doing it and pretending like he went deer hunting and got something, and like I don't know exactly how he did it.
Well, it's horrific, but I can't help chuckling inside thinking, honey, what's for dinner?
and yeah, and it was around the time of the like Black Plague, so people were like starving to death. So I don't know if it was just desperation mixed with a little bit of screws loose. And
said he was seeing people as food. I was thinking of the cartoon Steak or something. Like he's looking at these people and they're just
let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Yeah, it is horrific, but sometimes you gotta laugh. You gotta laugh a little bit about these things, or
I would encourage anybody with a strong stomach to look into Albert Fish if you don't know who he is, because he did so much awful, gross shit that I wouldn't feel right saying it on here. Like, just, yeah.
Talking about werewolf
Surprised.
movies, American Werewolf in London, there's a lot of gore in those movies. People are shredded. So seeing somebody that was, cut up or something really bad or something, it would be hard to explain,
Well, like the house still stands where he did that, where he murdered Grace Budd, and
Want to
like
spend the night there?
Well, I can't remember how old the video was I watched, but it was for sale, and it's a really nice looking old house. But he butchered her basically and spent 9 days in that house consuming her. So that was that. And then, but there was a string of murders leading up to him getting caught. And that goes along with what you were saying. They were just finding small children, like ages 10 and under, like laying along, in ditches and in the woods and just vanishing. And he was also known as the Gray Man because initially people would just see this old gray-haired guy. And when they found Grace Budd, they didn't think that an old man would be capable of doing what the evidence was like suggesting was done. So that kept him in the clear for years because of his age and stature, basically. He looked helpless.
And once again, when you go to the other side of the supernatural, werewolves are also another supernatural, immortal type being where they can bite each other, scratch each other, however it's transmitted, similar to the vampires. So they make more werewolves and the clans get bigger and bigger. And
the shapeshifting.
And they also have weaknesses like vampires. So if you got a werewolf problem, no worries. I think the silver bullet works on them, and some of the similar vampire methods also work on werewolves. And if nothing else, get yourself an exorcist, because I hear they're real popular. I hear they're real popular these days. A lot of people making some good bank being an exorcist. So must be a lot of these critters running around out there these days. So make a call. Who are you going to call? Right?
Grassman Chronicles.
The Grassman Busters. So, so you do have the realistic sides of a story of people just trying to explain horrific things. And then they morphed into, little fancier stories. And it also reminds me of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type story too, where it's man at its worst, man at his best type thing.
That was also mentioned that it could have been a way to explain mental illness alongside of all the other happenings going on, trying to say that somebody turns into a monster when they drink, or even just
the full moon.
Yeah.
Because the full moon not only triggers that, but there's a lot of other mythologies about full moons. That's the magic hour and the magic day, the day to do different things and celebrate things. And so the full moon is obviously in a lot of the stories and cultures too, because everybody sees the moon. So they've all got some moon in their cultural beliefs somewhere.
Right.
What do you think, Slew? Anything else you like about werewolves? Did you learn anything about werewolves? Do you think werewolves are pretty cool beasties?
Yeah, they're pretty cool beasties, I guess.
They are pretty badass beasties. and talking about the underworld movies. There's a lot of fight scenes between the vampires and the werewolves that are really cool, and it's kind of demonstrating who's got what power and who gets over on who, how, and everything. So yeah, definitely those. If you want to see them fighting each other, those are the movies to watch.
Yeah.
So speaking of, who do you think would win, the werewolf or the vampire?
I think if it's just a straight up fist fight, a werewolf, but because I think they're just more powerful. But I don't know.
Oh, don't forget the vampire can morph though, so the vampire can
Yeah,
be
I was going to
just
say,
as big and ugly.
I think I'd take the vampire for that reason, because it can morph.
It can morph.
Well, so can the werewolf. Werewolf's a shapeshifter.
Yeah, but
you would think, but the vampire could probably be twice the size of the werewolf, though, right? I don't know. The werewolf kind of, they're just like
vampires usually
size,
like,
right?
Aren't vampires able to like poof and be gone and then back into like, couldn't he escape like pretty easily that way though?
Well, they turn into a bat. They can fly away.
Yeah. I think
that's not really
part of theirs or not.
Yeah, that's not really part of fighting though. We're talking cage match here. There's no there's no sneaking off. There's no sneaking
cage
off.
the bat.
Well, one thing for sure is if you get attacked by a werewolf, you're going to be bandaged up like a mummy. And speaking of mummies, that brings us to our next story. And we have a special guest, Slew, here because Slew wanted to share a bit about mummies with us. So, Slew, what do you got to say about mummies?
Well, whenever I was looking into this, I found a little bit of a few details that were kind of contradictory, or maybe I just read them that way, but I included them anyways, and I put like where I got them at. The earliest known practice of intentional mummification is approximately 2600 BCE, according to the Smithsonian website. And they say it's during the 4th and 5th dynasties. But this seems to conflict with other details, and I don't know if this is just because, like, I think that might be an older article that I'd found, and now they've discovered more mummies elsewhere, because it conflicts with the Chinchorro mummies, which are the people of Chile, that their mummies are from the 5000 BCE, and they seem to be intentional. So that seems to conflict a little bit there, and I'm pretty sure it's just that there's new evidence that the Chinchorro mummies, now we've been finding more of them and dating the back with carbon dating and all of that. But getting back to this, I'll start off with the Egyptians. I'll talk about the Chinchorros more later. The oldest known Egyptian mummy dated around 3500 BCE. That's according to the PBS website, which I said still kind of knocks the 2600 out of the water with the Smithsonian. So I think maybe more recent testing and stuff has found out that they're older than what we initially thought, because I found that in a lot of articles about the other ones as well. But that's what I'd found there. The oldest known Egyptian mummy dated around 3500 BCE. And they say they believe they've been created because of the climate that preserved the dead, and not necessarily the embalming process itself. It was more to do with just the climate. But their mummification process consisted of taking salt water and wine, around 14% alcohol content, and washing the bodies with them. They would remove the brain through the nasal cavity with a hook, and organs were removed except for the heart. The thoracic cavity was filled with bags of natron. It's a form of natural salt for internal drying. So, and they had embalming booths that were set up all along the banks of the Nile River. Embalming took approximately 70 days. They basically had these booths set up like salespeople and had like mummification that they were selling, which is kind of wild to think about. And they had like actual wood figures and stuff that were made to look like what the end process of the mummification was going to be. So they even had like little models that they had with them that they were showing, which is wild to think about. That's, you know, we're talking 3500 BCE. That's it's just crazy for me to think about that. For the Egyptians, when a person died, spiritual essence survived and went on a journey where it encountered numerous divine and demonic beings, ending in judgment by Osiris, the god of the dead. If found blameless, they could live with the gods in paradise. The body needed to stay intact to make this journey, though. So that was part of the reason of their mummification process, other than the kind of necessity of it around that time. Or just the environment itself would pretty well create a mummy fairly easily, which we'll get into a little bit later. But royalty was treated differently in the Egyptian society when it came to mummification. They would be wrapped with linen and with amulets placed in the layers of the textiles with the body. So there was like a definite difference with the royalty, and not, I don't believe everybody got mummified so much. Like, it was mostly who could afford it. So with the story of Osiris, though, I was wanting to get into some of that. His brother, so this is the story. His brother Seth was jealous of his reign on earth. Of course, this is a summary of all of this. But his brother was jealous of his reign on earth and offered a beautiful chest to anyone that could fit inside it. And this was, of course, a trap set for Osiris. So Osiris laid down, and Seth slammed the chest shut and threw it into the Nile River. Isis, the widow and sister of Osiris, finds the body on the shore of Byblos, where a tree grew around it. The king of Byblos used the trunk of this tree as a support pillar for his palace roof. Isis successfully petitioned for its return and got the chest and body back. And Isis, from what I gathered, has powers. She uses magic and stuff in a lot of the story. Seth found the coffin while hunting, and when he recognized it was Osiris, he cut the body into 14 pieces and scattered them across Egypt. Isis and her sister Nephthys search for Osiris's pieces. Isis and Nephthys find all of the parts except for his phallus, which was eaten by a fish. Hate it when that happens. Detachable penis. Isis magically replaces his phallus and conceives their son Horus during all of this.
Bear parts.
Yeah. So then at the end of the story, Anubis embalms and wraps Osiris's body to create the first mummy of ancient Egypt. After being embalmed, Osiris was brought back to life with magic of Isis and resurrecting him as the god of the underworld. And that is the story of Osiris, and that's what's actually they're basing their religion off of, is this god, and that's why they're mimicking these things that the god did in the story with the mummification process. So they think that when they die and everything, their soul's going to go along as long as their body's intact, their soul will go along and get to do all of the same things, basically. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'd like to move on to the Chinchorro mummies, though. These were interesting. I didn't realize that like Chile there's Chilean and Argentinian like mummies and stuff around South America. So these mummies are from 5000 BCE. They actually predate the Egyptian mummies. They're the oldest mummies, at least the oldest intentional mummies on Earth that we found. Their mummification process was slightly different than what the Egyptian process was. Where the Egyptian process, they kind of like did a little bit of like embalming with the wine and stuff and kind of preserving the body with things like that. This mummification was basically the same when it came to like taking the organs out and all of that, and the cavities were dried while the skin was ripped off and they stuffed it with natural fibers and clay and sticks and stuff to help like keep it all up. And then the skin was sewn back together with reeds, and they attached thick black hair onto the mummy's head and then covered the face with clay and a mask with openings for the mouth and eyes. And then they finally painted the body in red or black using pigments from minerals, ochre, manganese, and iron oxide. So the reason they mostly mummified their corpses and everything seemed to be that the bodies wouldn't decompose real well in the dry environment and everything. So they kind of naturally did it anyway, and that was kind of how it started. Men, women, children, and sometimes fetuses, regardless of their status in society or whatever, they were mummified. So it was different than what the Egyptian thing was, where it was kind of royalty and people that could afford it. This was, and the sales pitch behind it and everything. And this seems to be more of just a thing that's not really a part of their, I mean, it's kind of part of their religion, but not, it's more to do with just the area that it is and everything and the climate. Then I'd read up on the Incas, which they date back to only like 1400 to 1533 CE. So these are people of Argentina and Peru area, and their mummification process involved removing the organs, saltwater wash, and chica corn beer wash. They did not dismember the bodies any or anything. They would dry the skin and cavity in hot ashes or coal, and they'd stuff with vegetable matter and animal hair, and then wrap it in textiles and put clay masks and wigs on them sometimes, which was kind of similar to the same process. That's kind of what they denote to, is that they've learned this off the Chinchorros. And so they kind of have a similar process, but it's a little bit different with the chica corn beer wash and stuff, where they're kind of using a preservative type deal with their mummification. With them, they also saw that the mummies were a physical link between the living and their gods. So it was kind of a similar deal with the way that Egypt and their stories went. It was a little bit the same way with their religion and all of that as well, and preserving the body for all of that. It was mostly used for royalty too, though, the same way that the Egyptians had their setup. And they would have a festival for their dead in which they carried mummies through the streets, which is kind of crazy to think about. So we talked about intentional mummification, which made me think of what in the hell could be unintentional mummification. At first it just kind of struck me as that's a weird way to think about it, but I guess that that's true. Natural mummification, I guess. So it would be basically you need an extreme environment when we're talking about mummification. It has to be extremely wet or extremely dry or extremely frozen or extremely high elevations for these things to occur. And they have to be kind of all just right. Hot, arid environments can mummify in approximately 2 weeks when it typically takes a couple months. So the environment plays a big role in all of that. Extreme temperatures or pH levels can slow down enzyme activity. And that's mainly what's doing the mummification there. You're preventing the enzymes within the cells from eating the rest of the cell and degrading and everything. So mummification occurs when cells lose water more rapidly than the enzymes in the cells can decay. Soil can sometimes play a part in mummification through osmosis or because heavy metals impede the enzymes. Not every part of the body mummifies at the same time. The heart takes longer to dry out. Hands, toes, and scrotum dry out the fastest. So another couple things that I found whenever I was looking into this, I know everybody's heard of King Tut and everything. Sorry, I didn't go into any of that because I found like this stuff was crazy interesting and I didn't want to go over the time limit. But one of the things that I found was a Siberian ice maiden that was a mummy that was found in 1993. It's a 2,500-year-old mummy, and it was found in the Yukok Plateau in Siberia. The tribe, this is where it's PzyrYks. Zurichs, relatives of Scythians who lived near the Black Sea. Pzyrix came from European descents and were nomadic. The Ice Maiden was found in her tomb, in her coffin, with cannabis and opium on or near her body when she was wrapped up. Research suggests that she died of breast cancer combined with injuries from a fall. The cannabis was thought to have been used to aid in the pain relief. I'm assuming the opium might have played a role in that as well, or
a little bit,
fun. But yeah, they were found with an animal-style deer tattoo on one of her shoulders and 2 more tattoos on her wrist and thumb. And all of this was pretty well preserved and everything too. It's crazy. They actually, when they went to move the body, I guess there was like issues where they should have probably kept it on ice or something, and it started to degrade on them while they were moving it. So yeah, like the tattoos didn't look as good after all of that. But she was thought to have been an elevated status of a priestess based on the items also found in her chambers. So I thought that was pretty cool and worth throwing in. And there's a spirit cave mummy. And this is believed, where I was talking about the unintentional mummification earlier, this is a case of that. It's a natural mummification process, and it's believed to be 10,600 years old, and this is in the United States. This is the oldest naturally created mummy, and that's in Nevada. And it was found wrapped in a rabbit's reed mats wearing moccasins. And it's believed to be part of, or the area of Nevada that this is in. It's owned by the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe. I know I'm probably slaughtering all of these things, but I thought that was wild. I didn't realize that there was mummies like that in the United States, but I guess there are pretty much all over the world where there's really arid dry climate and everything, or the extremes like I was talking about earlier, pH levels and elevations and things. So, what do you guys think about mummies?
Well, I just want to let Tobin. I want to let Tobin know I'm on both channels. I got both going, Tobin. So whatever channel you are on, I'm monitoring both of them, and so yeah, we appreciate you being on the Grassman channel. That's where we want everybody to go to, because once again, we need y'all to subscribe on the Grassman Chronicles. Want to see them sub counts going up over there, so we can move everything over to the Grassman Chronicles. So you're welcome on either channel, but yeah, we'd like everybody to get subscribed on the Grassman Chronicles, and then we'll do the show from there. So subscribe over there. Hello, Jester, for joining. And I want to say hi to Tobin and John and Bree and Jer. Hello, Jer. And Tux, good to see you. And James and Kirby's and Mike. And I think that's everybody. If I missed anybody, hello. Thanks for joining us, everybody. All right. Go ahead there, Trees.
Yeah. Slew, did you see anything about Otzi while you were doing that?
No.
He was an
I'm
Iceman.
There was I did leave out that there's an Acha man that's part of the Chistoro.
There was a dude named Otzi that they found, and he was so well preserved that they thought that it was like a missing hiker or some shit.
Was that?
But he was like, he's an Ice Age man.
Was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I might have read through that. There were so many, there was so much whenever I started looking it up. It was crazy how many different stories about mummies and stuff there were.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it was going to be that much. But
there's a sect of monks, Buddhist monks, that when it's that time, they basically go in a cave and they just sit there and pass away. And again, because of the environment, they just naturally mummify.
That was one of the things too that I was reading about. A lot of it was, there would be these buildings that they were built to where the winds came in or whatever to help air the place out. And they just made basically natural tombs. So whenever they would, or like a tomb, but the mummification area or whatever, it was just the perfect environment for that because the air is constantly flowing through and drying everything out. Like a dehydrator.
That's something I never thought of, would be a culture that would just adopt it just because the bodies weren't breaking down. So you might as well wrap them up or something, because if you're in that type of environment, they're just not breaking down. So that's
it might have just been like a respectful way to wrap them up so animals wouldn't get them and stuff.
And another big difference seems to be you were mentioning one of the South American versions seemed more like a taxidermy type thing.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty crazy too.
Where the Egyptians,
I like the marketing from the Egyptians, like that, the hustle that we're doing.
Get your mummification here. Step right up.
Yeah, they got their model. They shaking it out. Look at this. This is what you look like.
I guess they had several different versions of it too. The fancier versions you'd get stuffed with, or you'd get like perfumes, expensive perfumes and stuff put on your body and stuff too. That was one of the things too. They said that it was so that you could recognize your body whenever you came back from your spiritual journey and stuff. It was so you
Right.
could recognize your body. They would put the perfumes on it and they'd dress it up in makeup and stuff and massage the skin out and stuff too. All kinds of crazy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Massage your
John.
mummy.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Everybody, want to get everybody subscribed over at the Grassman over there. Link is in the description, and I believe I think Logan posted it.
Yeah.
Yes, we're pushing it.
We're going to be having a big Christmas giveaway at some point. So,
and it's going to be for Grassman Chronicles subscribers. I think we're going to make that the deal, right, Trees? You got to be subscribed on the Grassman Chronicles if you want a chance at the special giveaway that Santa Claus might drop in your stocking this year over there at the Grassman Chronicles. Okay, so get subscribed over there, because Trees was talking with Santa, and you want to be on the naughty list, right?
Santa
So get on that good list over at the Grassman Chronicles, okay? And I think it's neat that the different approaches, and especially with the Egyptian, they definitely had a afterlife thought in mind, burying other things. You've seen some of the tombs, and you said you didn't want to go into King Tut and that, but those types of pharaohs and leaders, and they got buried with everything. They had a chariot and they had a boat, and they had everything they needed for the afterlife.
And wasn't like, I don't know if this is just folklore and myth, or like how the movies would portray booby traps and stuff in the pyramids of the tombs to keep grave robbers or whatever from stealing stuff.
The way I understand it, there's only one way in and one way out, and the only other channel was for the big block to slide in that blocked off the only one way in and one way out. So
yeah,
but of course, if you chisel away
a pyramid scheme,
if you chisel away at it long enough, though, you're going to find a way through. And sadly, the archaeologists have discovered that a lot of those tombs were robbed a long time ago, and that stuff a lot of it is long gone. So tombs like King Tut were a rarity, and to actually see one that was mostly intact is a rarity. So, but again, kind of in the immortality line and the religious line, different beliefs about the afterlife.
And similar to kind of like the Vikings, how they would be buried in, some of them with their ship or their, animals or different possessions, their swords, their axes and shields and shit.
And they're talking about Otzi.
Yeah.
A little bit of trying to sort out exactly how old, but definitely old. So we'll call it old. And we got boats and hoes. Yeah, we do. 3275, and John says pretty close. All right, there we go. So we've reached an agreement on about how old. So there you go. And that is just amazing. Even with the mummification process, that it still can last that long is amazing. These bodies are thousands of years old, and if it's 2,000 or 5,000, it's still amazing that you can actually kind of see what they look like, and maybe what they had for their last meal, what they were wearing, what kind of tools they had, all that. So it's a fascinating.
Had tattoos also.
And tattoos, yeah.
And I think he may have had a hash pipe as well. I can't remember. I thought he had. There was some other
right.
one I was thinking of that had some kind of
that
smoking.
The other
device.
thing is cannabis and opium and stuff were also used as like a ritualistic that was kind of part of their religion too at that time. The older religions you get into and stuff like that, they use that as for ceremonies and for like all just telling their stories and shit. Like,
Right.
Probably like an
Right.
incense type thing too.
yeah,
Probably making friends too if you show up at a new place and nobody knows you. Because it seemed like authors
yeah.
was coming from somewhere or going somewhere. Because they did like an autopsy on him and said he was shot in the back. So like where they found him was pretty close to where he died. So the way he was moving and the terrain he was in, like if there was a settlement there, it would have been down in this certain area, and he was walking out and got shot in the back, is what they thought. So
that's the one that had all the battle scars, right? He was a series was, and then in the end, it still had a bunch of arrows stuck in him or something like that.
Yeah, but I think that's what he died from. Like they found the.
I'm pretty sure that was the one they said had battle scars from before. So,
oh, he might have.
It was regular warrior type.
It's been a while since I looked into that. I need to check that out again.
Hello, Purple. Good to see you. And Sumami. Hello.
Yep, Purple, Sumami, Bree, John, Tobin, Tux. I know I'm missing people.
There's a bunch in
there. Jester was asking, weight was Jesus's burial description mummification, like low level.
Well, the body was prepared by tradition, so it depended on the time and the locale, because the Judaism traditions kind of varied from neighborhood to neighborhood. But the basic idea was some kind of preparation for the body. So, and by sundown. And they used, different herbs. And when I was doing my shroud video, I was trying to find out if they used them more as oils or as whole herbs. And you get stories going both ways. So, but either way,
it was interesting. The shroud thing was kind of like they had a little, there was a salesman thing going on with that too for forever. Like
it's going on today.
There was several shrouds that were the shroud of Turin that were around like throughout history.
And there's
the shroud of Angela.
Well, they were selling them as collectibles almost. And so people are finding the fake shrouds or whatever, which they never find a true one. You can't, like, I don't know.
Well, one of the possessors of the shroud of Turin at one time was kept in a box with a lot of other religious artifacts, like a piece of the cross and all those different artifacts that roll around. Some of Jesus's blood, all these things that roll around, that this was actually in a box, of a whole bunch of other trinkets. And at one time, it was a party favor. They would cut pieces off and pass it out to the guests as a party favor. And to the serious, let's call it worshiping of it, is more of a recent thing. It has damage on it, because mold damage, because for a while somebody just stuck in a jar and kept it in their basement. I mean, it wasn't treated like it was Jesus's burial cloth. I mean, if you thought you had Jesus' burial cloth, maybe put it up on the top shelf somewhere, not in a jar in your basement and let it get moldy.
Right. Well, they called them relics. Like it wasn't, it was like kind of known, because like every Catholic temple or whatever had a chunk of Jesus's flesh supposedly, and like a piece of the cross and a fucking nail or some shit, like.
Well, they let
all bullshit.
They let a piece of one of those, the cloth, go to. Didn't they get it carbon dated or something, and it did not turn out the way that they wanted it to, and now it's
like 200 years old or something.
well.
Like, it wasn't
That's the
old.
part that was repaired. That's the part that was repaired on it from the
it's
fire that happened.
Watch my video. I cover all those topics on the shroud, and I put a lot of effort into my video, and I cite people and everything in it. Okay, I just don't talk. I say, this expert says, this expert says, the person that did the testing says, okay, and it's my understanding that Ember is going to have a video out on the shroud, and Mr. Jimmy Tux that I saw in the chat has also been working on a shroud video, and maybe in a couple parts, because as they both discovered, as I did, there is a lot of stuff about the shroud, and you can do, and people have wrote books on it because there is a lot of information, but it all boils down to the dating methods have not been challenged by the church. So the church basically accepts that it's not first century. So there you go. But check out my shroud video and comment on it. I've been asking people to review it. I've been trying to get SJ and Otangelo and everybody to review it, and I got no response. So I can take it. If you think it sucks, just put down in there in the comments that it sucks. Okay, I can take it. All right, we can all take it, right? A little criticism never hurts anybody. But the mummy stories are great, and I can't mention mummies without talking about Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, right? That's a classic in its own. And Abbott and Costello also met the werewolf, vampire. I'm not sure about a Frankenstein.
I think Scooby-Doo met all of those too.
Well, Scooby-Doo, of course. But I always loved and the mummies with Frasier. I like watching those movies. The lots of fight scenes and everything, and if you like that kind of action type movie, those are good movies. Trying to think what else. What's another good mummy movie?
I think the Three Stooges had one.
Three Stooges have one too?
I think back in the day, I think they at least an episode. I'm not sure if they had a movie.
And I'm trying to think, did the Addams Family or the Munsters have a mummy relative? I'm sure they must have.
They had to have.
I thought the Addams Family had him just occasionally pop out of a fucking coffin or something that was in the.
Oh, they do have body bags, don't they? They were looking for something the one time. They were taking body bags out of a closet or something, weren't they?
I think
that seems
it's
familiar.
been so long.
This is
I was a little
so and so, and this is cousin so and so, and they're like they had the body bags in the closet on hangers or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, those could have been natural mummies.
Really hot, dry closet.
Well, and speaking of, there have been people that died alone in their homes, and they had the right HVAC running, and they have found them mummified because sadly nobody noticed that they were not bringing in their mail or answering their phone anymore. And they have found people basically mummified sitting in their recliner or whatever too.
That probably happens out west a lot, where there's not a lot of moisture in the air or anything.
Yeah, it's totally with the HVAC settings and everything.
Yep.
And it's sad, but in a way, it's it's kind of cool if you're being a museum for the next 5,000 years, staring back at everybody, giving giving a few people the creeps and stuff. So you're
you get to ride that Osiris train, you know, like you get to go on that journey. So
basically, yeah, you can track all your mummies back then to that curse, right?
Yeah.
Wrapping him up and throwing him into the Nile, and then emulating that. Basically, they can trace it back. That's their origin story for the whole ritual of how to prepare the dead. And then versus with the South America, then it was more just like a thing that it was happening anyways. So maybe they were just adorning the bodies a little bit, and it just grew from there. And it doesn't hurt to have some herbs and some smell goods.
Herbs and spices.
Lots of spices, you know, some old spices. Because death is very odoriferous, and so there is a lot of rituals where they are using a lot of herbs. So, and what was the other thing? Oh, and then as far as then bringing them back to life, I always kind of got the impression mummies were kind of like zombies, right? They just kind of mindlessly walk around, you know, except for the Mummy movie. That seems to be the exception. But otherwise, most of them just seem to be walking around, bumping into the wall and stuff, right? It's just, if they get a hold of you, it's by luck or something, right?
Yeah, kind of like the old zombies before they started having the fast movers.
Yeah, they just like a wind up toy, right, with their arms sticking out, just and if you bump into something, you just bounce off of it and you go in another direction. Yeah, then now with the Fraser mummy, though, yeah, you're talking. They took a totally different thing where he was messing with all the undead stuff, coming back from the undead, using the undead books, the Book of the Dead book and everything, and they were using, bringing all that stuff in, and then to be a superpower being a demigod or something versus just that mindless zombie bopping around into walls and stuff. And what else? Oh yeah, and then that's what I just mentioned, the Book of the Dead, stuff like that, where you have all that Egyptian mythology about afterlife and all that kind of stuff too. So then we got to add in then, would a mummy be a worthy competitor against a vampire or a werewolf?
I don't know. He might be food for the werewolf.
Right.
He might eat the bone.
That'd be a piece of beef jerky for that werewolf. Like,
yeah, I'm thinking a mummy's not really a fighter or anything. Mummy's just, if it gets a hold of you, it's gonna break you in two or something. But it's not really a cage fighter. I think if I keep getting the image of giving it a tug and it just unwraps and spins around.
What if the mummy's Jesus though?
A couple adolescent werewolves like get a hold of a bandage and then start tug of warring on the mummy, and then it's a mess. Then a bunch of potpourri flies out of it.
Yeah, because you got to wonder. Usually, like in the Mummy movie, it just turns to dust. So,
and like the Egyptians had a bunch of cats, so the kittens, if they see the trail of bandage dragging behind the mummy, it might get a hold of it and trip it up too.
Playtime.
Yep, black cats.
Well, I think out of them, I don't think I would fear the mummy so much. And again, with the vampires, they don't really seem to be out to shred you or anything, unless you're fighting them in the underworld movies. But you come up against a werewolf, and it's just going to be bad. You're going to get shredded. I mean, you're talking about a wolf on superpower steroids, right?
The 30 Days of Night vampires, I wouldn't want nothing to do with them either. You got to watch that movie. I'm telling you.
I will mark it down.
There's that Let the Right One In too. I don't know if you've that vampire movie about the little vampire girl or boy. A little vampire boy.
I've never seen
girl.
that one.
It was good. Well, it was like originally I forget. It was in
Interview with a Vampire back in the day wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
With like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and that little I forget who the little girl was.
Yeah. Yeah, The Interview with a Vampire. Yeah, that one's not bad. Yeah, I forgot that one's. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
That was that Scorsese?
Oh, I don't know offhand. I'd have to look, but it was a big deal then.
It was a big director. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good movie. I've watched it a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So I also wanted to mention that we have also covered some ghost stories on previous shows, and we did a video on black cats. So if this Halloween episode wasn't enough for you, go watch those videos. You can get some ghost stories and the history of the black cats too, because we have lots here at the Grassman Chronicles and more to come. And it wouldn't be Halloween, for me at least, without an honorable mention to Frankenstein. Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, is a novel written by Mary Shelley and first published in 1818. It is considered one of the earliest and most influential works of science fiction. The story revolves around the ambitious scientist Victor Frankenstein and the creation of a sentient but grotesque creature. Victor Frankenstein is a brilliant young scientist who becomes obsessed with the idea of creating life from non-living matter. He assembles a creature by collecting body parts from various sources and uses his knowledge of science and alchemy to bring it to life. However, upon witnessing the creature's hideous appearance, Victor is overcome with horror and disgust and abandons it. The creature, who is never named in the novel, but is often referred to as Frankenstein's monster, is left to fend for itself. Despite the creature's physical appearance, it is intelligent and sensitive. It seeks acceptance and companionship, but is met with fear, rejection, and violence. The novel explores the idea of the responsibility the scientific community has and the consequences of playing God. It delves into the moral and ethical questions raised by the scientific advancements of the time. Frankenstein is a cautionary tale that raises questions about the limits of scientific exploration and the moral and social responsibility that comes with wielding great power. It has had a significant impact on literature and popular culture, inspiring numerous adaptations and interpretations in various media. Indeed, science has great responsibility in many areas. What do you think? Very, very profound message in there that science has great power. And how far is too far?
Right.
So what do you think? Would you want to be immortal?
I think I would get bored after a while. It's a kind of like the same conundrum about like heaven, or you know what I mean? Like because I mean, heaven's basically immortality that's supposed to be paradise or whatever. And even that, like after a while, when you want to just like go to sleep or something, like I can't maybe eternity with like million-year naps or something. I don't know.
Still, though, yeah, I would have to agree. Eventually, you would get bored, even if and if some of the beliefs like Christianity, where you're gonna know everything all of a sudden, then it seems to be even more boring because you already know everything. I mean, you can't even
You could launch
ponder.
yourself into space and just like float around out there because you couldn't die. If you could just float, like, because it may be infinite, and maybe there would be enough shit to do if you like launched yourself like out of orbit somewhere and just took a telescope with you and just looked at shit for like a billion years or something. I don't know.
I think it's so like so many other things. Be careful what you wish for, and consider the double-edged sword of so many things. And like with a bunch of these stories, it's not just being immortal. They have to live as basically a different species. They have to follow the rules of that species. They have to live as that species. And it's like with the vampires, they have to drink blood, or they can't sustain themselves any other way. So it's would you be able to, or would you be willing to trade off for that immortality? And to the other side, with the Frankenstein side, what if you chose no, I'm done at 80, okay, I'm done, all right, and then somebody digs you up and reanimates you, so you have to, there's that question too of maybe that person didn't want to be reanimated, all right, right? So
That's like the Mormons that like baptize you after you're dead.
yeah, who asked for that, right?
Right.
So I think if I was content with resting in peace and somebody disturbed my peace, I might be a little upset with them, saying, right, who are you?
What time
So
is it? Where's my phone at?
it could go both ways, right?
Yeah.
And once again, I wanted to respond. I wanted to remind everybody, go get subscribed over at the Grassman Chronicles channel. Links in the description, so we can get the show moved over there, because Trees and I want to have it done over there on its own channel eventually. And once again, Santa's going to come for the Christmas episode, and we want to reward somebody for being a viewer and a viewer on the Grassman Chronicles. So you want to get subscribed over there, or Santa might miss you, okay, for the Christmas episode of the Grassman Chronicles. And as promised, Trees and I, we like to have a little fun with the show. And because it's Halloween, we wanted to cover Halloween. And it's not our usual cryptids, although maybe a little bit with the werewolf. But we are going to be right back into the cryptids and right back into the Bigfoot stories coming up next month. So for all the Bigfoot and Grassman and Yeti and Sasquatch fans, we got you covered. We got a whole bunch of stories we want to cover, and we can't wait to do them, okay? And I know Trees is looking forward to it too. Trees is in Grassman territory, and you never know. He may just spot one outside his door one of these days. So we're always hopeful, right?
Oh, definitely. I'm hoping they smell the grass burning and show up.
And I want to thank everybody for stopping by in the chat. Appreciate everybody. And I hope you all have a happy Halloween, and you're having a good spooky season. And if, like we said, there's plenty of scary movies to watch about mummies, vampires, and werewolves. And there's also some comedies. If you not so much gore, you can tune into one of the comedies. Abbott and Costello, Leslie Nielsen, George Hamilton, all these people that have made spoofs. Have a good laugh, whatever your choice is for Halloween. And Before we go, Trees, I want to let everybody know about your channel and what you got going on over there.
Yeah. I'm LookAtTheTrees. I do different outdoor videos, along with sometimes I do Pastor Blaster episodes where I talk smack at some kind of evangelical pastor. And I have a knife video coming up soon with 3 knives from the Rogan tool knife line that I'll be putting together here. I should have it up probably by tomorrow afternoon, I would think. And other than that, subscribe to me and subscribe to the Skeptical Satanist and the Grassman Chronicles
And the Captive Desk.
and the Captive Desk.
Got that, everybody? We want everybody subscribed. Spread it around. Spread the love, okay? And Slew, what you got coming up? Tell folks a little bit about yourself and your channel.
I have the Skeptical Satanist. We go into different details of politics and things going around the world affecting the LGBTQ community, as well as the way that some programs, like I'll get into about the political side with the church and things related to that, like Project Blitz and stuff like that. But right now I'm a little bit on a hiatus. I've got my one friend's life is just coming up for both of us all at once, just life. But go and check out my content. I'm on YouTube. I've got my most recent videos up. Trying to think of the last one that I'd put up now. Sorry.
No rush.
I believe it was a live stream that I was on. I had up. Oh, Christianity and Capitalism was the last one that we had up. A Match Made in Heaven. So come check that out. I've got several other videos up too on there where I've interviewed people like Mary or Fee from the Misfit Amish. I had them on with me a while back, and we got to talk about some things. I had a Fuck Pat Robertson celebration, so that was a fun one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I check out my content, give it a like. I would also recommend if anybody's struggling with religious trauma or has been having trouble with their deconversion or anything like that, or has had issues while in a religion, to check out the the Secular Therapy Project, for one, can help with finding therapists and stuff. And Dr. Daryl Ray is the founder of that, and the Recovering from Religion Foundation. I want to make sure I didn't end up saying the wrong one, because freedom from religion always pops into my head with that one. But yeah, Recovering from Religion Foundation can help people that are dealing with those things. They have volunteers there that can help talk them through issues in their life and everything due to religious trauma. I think that's a good program. I always like to throw that in.
Check it out, everybody. And Sumami was asking, what is a Grassman? And we are the Grassman Chronicles because here in Ohio, Bigfoots are known as Grassman. And Trees and I are in Ohio. So we have the Grassman Chronicles. Okay, Sumami? And I know somebody did answer in the chat, but I just wanted to let everybody know, because if anybody else was wondering why we are the Grassman Chronicles, that's why. Because Bigfoots come in many sizes, shapes, colors, smells, and different names depending where they're at. So, and we're going to cover all of them, so don't worry. Yeah. But we did cover. If you check out our first episode, we covered Grassman and why it's a Grassman, and it's because they build big grass nests.
Yep. And coincidentally, so do black bears.
We learn not only do we cover cryptids, but we have a little educational stuff in there too. Again, I learned some stuff tonight about South American mummies. Were basically, well, they're mummifying themselves anyways, so let's fix them up a little bit, right? So you're going to learn a little bit on the Grassman Chronicles too. So another reason to subscribe and stay tuned. And in closing, Trees, Slew, anything else to say? Want to wish everybody happy Halloween?
Yeah, everybody.
What's your favorite?
Enjoy
What's your
Halloween.
favorite? What's your favorite Halloween beastie? Or
It's got to be the devil for me.
that's always a winner.
That's
I always like the South Park Satan the best.
Yeah.
He's got a great attitude.
Yeah.
Then in closing, then we will say happy Halloween to everybody. Have a spooky and safe Halloween, and we'll see everybody next month at the Grassman Chronicles, where we are going to be covering some Bigfoot stories. So stay tuned, and we'll see y'all then.